Hello, and this is the second part of You're a Bad Man, Mr. Gum by Andy Stanton. Chapter 3, Mr. Gum lays his plans like the horror he is. The next morning, Mr. Gum was in the butcher's shop. The butcher was a scrawny old man called Billy William III, and no one knew what the third bit meant.
I reckon he was in prison when he was younger and his number was 3,
said Jonathan Ripples, the fattest man in town.
Maybe it's because he's the third nastiest person in town,
said the little girl called Peter.
I'll tell you what I think,
said Martin Laundrette, who ran the laundrette.
When he was a young man, he was probably in prison and... Hey,
said Jonathan Ripples,
stop stealing my ideas.
Shut up, said Martin Laundrette. Why don't you go on a diet? Of course, Billy William III had his own theories.
It's 'cause I'm actually royalty,
he would tell anyone foolish enough to listen.
I'm third in the line for the throne of England after them other geezers.
He always pronounced England in this way. Other words he said funny were hospital, fountain and funny. Nobody believed Billy William III's story about being royalty except for Billy William himself, and even he didn't believe it most of the time, but he enjoyed lying. It made him laugh. Not a nice laugh like you and I would do, but a sneaky old laugh on the inside where nobody else could see. Anyway, forget it. The important thing is that Mr. Gum had gone to old Billy William III's butcher's shop, which was called Billy William III's Right Royal Meats, to buy the biggest load of meat he could get his angry hands on. He had a plan.
I've got a plan, he told Billy William. Next time that whopper dog comes a-playing on my lawn, well, he better watch out. That's all. My plan is the best.
Are you going to be laying down all that meat and poisoning it so when that barking fatty eats it, you fall down dead? Guessed Billy William.
Maybe I am,
said Mr. Gum, a little annoyed that the butcher had guessed his plan so quickly. He had been looking forward to explaining it in detail and impressing Billy William with his cleverness and bad heart.
Talking of bad heart, said the butcher, here's 3 pounds of it. It's been sitting out in the sun since last Tuesday. That ought to poison him and no mistake, Mr. Gum, me old slipper.
Why did you leave it sitting out in the sun?
Said Mr. Gum, taking the horrible sloppy bag from the disgusting butcher.
I like watching the flies go mad over it, laughed Billy William. They're funty.
You see, that was how he pronounced the word funny.
It's the funtiest sight in all of England.
I laughed so hard. That's him talking.
I laughed so hard, I nearly had to go to the hospital.
Well, thank you, me old gobbler,
said Mr. Gum, handing over some money that Billy William would later discover to be made out of lies and broken promises. And with that, he left the shop. Out in the high street, Mr. Gum remembered he hadn't been nasty to anyone for over 10 minutes. He looked around for any children who might be playing or just walking or anything. It didn't really matter what they were doing. Even reading a book would be fine. Just some children he could be nasty to. But there were none to be seen, so he went and bought a newspaper. He opened it up and saw a photo of a 10-year-old boy who'd just won the World Record Cup reward for secret burping.
This'll do nicely,
said Mr. Gum, and he scowled at the photograph all the way home, hardly even looking where he was going. At one point he tripped over a stone, which made him feel like the burper was somehow beating him. But that only made him scowl harder than ever.
So you see, I've won again,
he said, with a proud smile which he quickly turned back into a scowl. Back home, Mr. Gum locked all the doors and windows, even the broken ones. Then he sat down to think on the old sailor's chest which stood in the front hall. It was a beautiful old thing made of mahogany, which is a type of wood called mahogany. And it was carved all over with amazing scenes of life at sea, with waves and whales and tall ships. Mr. Gum had owned the sailor's chest for over 40 years, but he had never once taken the time to appreciate its beauty. What's more, Mr. Gum had never once thought to open that beautiful chest and see what was inside. Had he done so, it might have been a very different story indeed. It might have been Mr. Gum's chocolatey adventure, because I'll tell you something. That old chest had once belonged to a sailor called Nathaniel Surname, the hero of the high seas. One Tuesday, long ago, he had saved a Spanish village from being destroyed by a terrible pirate called Kevin. As a prize, the village presented Nathaniel with the chest, which was absolutely stuffed full of chocolate. Not just any old chocolate, mind you, but special chocolate made by the dolphins of the region. And it might just be a legend, but some said it was magic chocolate with fantastic powers. And they always whispered when they said it, which is why in the book it's written so small. How the chest ended up in Mr. Gum's house, nobody knows. But there it had stood for over 40 years, unloved and unopened. As a result, Mr. Gum had never discovered Nathaniel's sugary treasure, which just goes to prove that angry people always miss out on their rewards. They were so busy sniping and griping that they never see the good things around them. As the famous song goes, you've got to have eyes, eyes for the lovely things in life. If you've only got eyes for the horrid and bad, how you gonna get, I said, how you gonna get, I said, how you gonna get the chocolate you deserve? Chorus. Yeah, 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 yes. You've got to have eyes, eyes for the amusing joy and stuff. If you've only got eyes for old walnuts filled with spit, how you gonna get, I said, how you gonna get, tell me how you gonna get the chocolate you deserve. So it was that Mr. Gum found himself sitting on a sailor's fortune of what may have been magic chocolate in terrible ignorance, hatching evil.
How do I know these cow-hearts are going to be rotten enough? He asked himself presently. I better try eating one myself. If it kills me, then I'll know it's rotten enough to use on that big woofer.
He took out a cow's heart and opened his mouth wide.
This is one of the craftiest things I've ever done, he chuckled,
raising the smelly greenish red meat to his lips.
I am a very clever man.
Mr. Gum was just about to take a bite when he realised this might not be such a clever idea after all. He put the heart back into the bag and thoughtfully scratched his beard. Not the beard that grew on his chin, but a spare one that grew on the wall that he used for scratching at from time to time. In the end, he decided to soak the rotten hearts in rat poison just to be sure.
It can't fail, he cackled. Old Dogger is in for a surprise he won't like at all.
Chapter 4. Mr. Gum has a cup of tea. Mr. Gum had a cup of tea. Chapter 5. Chapter 5 is called Jammy Grammy Lammy for Hupper Berlin Stereo EO Leb Ciep Mnemonica La Strapek de Grespin de Crespin de Spespin de Vespin de Whoop de Loop de Brunkle Merry Christmas Le Noir. The next morning Mr. Gum inspected the cow hearts. They had been soaking all night in rat poison, and they were good and proper dangerous to dogs now, and gave off a foul smell even worse than before.
That blibbering dog be smelling this bad smell, and with the animal instincts of animals he'll refuse to eat 'em, thought the crafty old man. I'd better disguise the smell with something nice. Shabba me whiskers!
Mr. Gum looked through his kitchen cupboards, but was there anything nice in there? Of course there wasn't. All he could find was a rotten turnip, a dried up mushroom, and a sock full of stale crisps. So off he headed into town. He was in a filthy mood, and as he walked along he muttered to himself.
Shabba me whiskers, he muttered. Who'd have thought poisoning that stupid whopper dog could be such hard work? What a bother it all is.
There was a little girl playing in the hedge as Mr. Gum walked by, and she heard what he said and grew alarmed.
What's old Mr. Gum up to now with talk of poisoning whopper dogs? Said the little girl to herself. What whopper dog can he mean? She ran through a list of all the whopper dogs that she knew. It didn't take long because she only knew one, Jake, the big lovable golden old hound. No, she cried. No, I won't let it happen. I loves that dog. Watch out, 'cause it's true. I loves him, and what's more, that dog saved my life once, and now I'm going to stand by playing in the hedge while that old grizzler flipping poisons him to death and destruction. No way, says I. I'll stop him. That's what I'll do. Now, this little girl's name was Jammy Grammy Lammy for Hupper Berlin Stereo Eo Leb Siet Mnemonica Lestrapek de Grespin de Crespin de Spespin de Vespin de Whoop de Loop de Brunkle Merry Christmas Lenoir. But all her friends called her Polly. You will have to make up your mind now whether or not you are her friend. If you are, then you can call her Polly too. But if you are not, then every time you see the name Polly in this story, in your head, you will have to say, Jammy Grammy Lammy for Hupper Berlin Stereo Eo Leb Siet Mnemonica Lestrapek de Grespin de Crespin de Spespin de Vespin de Whoop de Loop de Brunkle Merry Christmas Lenoir instead. For instance, she's going to run down a hill like this. Polly went racing down the hill like a runaway marble. Now, if you're her friend, then don't worry about it. But if you're not her friend, you will have to read it like this. Jammy Grammy Lammy for Hupper Berlin Stereo Eo Leb Sieb Mnemonica Lestrapek de Grespin de Crespin de Spespin de Vespin de Whoop de Loop de Brunkle Merry Christmas Lenoir went racing down the hill like a runaway marble. Most people in Lamonic Bibber chose to be Polly's friend for the sake of time and convenience. Luckily though, Polly was a girl worth liking. She was 9 years old, with lovely sandy hair like a cat's daydream and a smile as happy as the Bank of England. And when she laughed, the sunlight went splashing off her pretty teeth like diamonds in search of adventure. So, Polly went racing down the hill like a runaway marble, determined to find Jake the dog before he fell victim to Mr. Gum's evil scheme. She didn't know exactly what the old man had in mind, but she knew her big friend was in trouble. She ran past the old curiosity shop and then ran back because she was curious to see what was inside. Then she remembered the danger Jake was in and continued on her way. She ran past a dustbin filled with rubbish, and then another one filled with rubbish, and then another one filled with rubbish, and then another one filled with princesses. There was something unusual about one of those dustbins, she had time to think, but she had to keep on running. She ran past big trees, little trees, and tiny, tiny little trees, so small they were more like pebbles. In fact, they were pebbles. She ran past a cat's ears, which were lying on the pavement, and a cat's nose and whiskers, which were lying on the pavement, and a cat's body and tail and legs and eyes and claws, which were lying on the pavement. In fact, it was all just one cat, lying on the pavement. She ran like the wind and then got tired and just walked like a breeze. But she soon sped up again because she was determined to save that tremendous dog. It was only after she'd been running for about half an hour that she remembered something quite important. She had absolutely no idea where Jake lived. And what's more, she was no longer in Lamonic Bibber. She had come to the woods on the edge of town, and they were big and scary and full of shadows. The ancient trees looked down from on high, stern and forbidding. "We are the trees," they seemed to whisper. "You are not welcome in this place. We are the trees." A cold wind blew, making Polly shiver, and she was certain one of the flowers was snarling at her. "Oh no!" she cried, sitting down on one of those massive toadstools you sometimes get in spooky woods. "I don't know where I am, and that old Jake's facing the biggest challenge of his doggy life, and I doesn't know where's to find him, and that flower's probably going to eat me." And with that she burst into tears. Just then an old man peered out of the window of a secret cottage, half hidden in the bushes behind her. Polly hadn't noticed the cottage, and I'm sure you wouldn't have either. That's the thing about secret cottages. They're secret. Well, said the old man. "What have we here? A little girl in trouble."
Hope you enjoyed that. More Mr. Gum next time. Stay safe. Be good. Bye.